The officer looked at me, then at the van, then back to Cheryl, who was already yelling something about federal violations. Funny, considering 5 minutes earlier she was trying to jimmy open my van door with a plastic bag and a ruler. Now she was being detained for interfering with an active federal investigation. Oh, and the drone? Let's just say she should count herself lucky I only used per shot. You might be asking, wait, what? How does someone pull that off legally? And how did she not notice? Well, let's rewind a bit. I didn't move out here for excitement. I didn't even move out here for the views, though the way the sun sets over the ridge does make you feel like the universe is nodding in your direction. I moved because I wanted to be left alone. Ex-military, now semi-retired and doing quiet contract work, I live on a decent patch of land on the edge of a ranching county, technically just outside the HOA boundaries. You wouldn't know that from the way Cheryl strutted up my gravel driveway on day one like she owned not just the neighborhood but the airspace above it. My house is a one-story ranch style with a tin roof and wraparound porch. Nothing flashy. The most suspicious item on my property is an old, unmarked white van left over from joint operations with a certain 3-letter agency. And yes, it's perfectly legal for me to keep it. The paperwork is cleaner than Cheryl's recycling bin after trash day, which I later learned she polices with the fervor of a caffeinated border collie. She knocked on my door with a clipboard in hand like it was a badge, introduced herself as Cheryl Winters, president of the HOA, and spoke with the tone of someone who thought that title gave her constitutional authority. I told her plainly that I wasn't part of the HOA. She squinted like I just recited Shakespeare in Latin, then gave a tight smile and said, "Well, we'll see about that." The next morning, I found a violation notice slipped under my gate. Bold red letters on knockoff letterhead screamed, "No commercial vehicles allowed." I stared at it, then looked at my van. No logos, no ladders, just a plain Ford E350 with some legal but sensitive tech inside. Still active in certain federal databases, but functionally retired. I wrote, "Not commercial. Federal," on a sticky note, added a smiley face, and stuck it on the inside of the driver's side window. I figured that would be the end of it. It wasn't. A few days later, I was sipping coffee on the porch when I heard the buzz of a drone. A mid-range consumer model hovered over my barn before lingering too close to the van. I waved. It buzzed even closer. That's when I spotted Cheryl in her backyard, controller in hand, peering over the hedge with binoculars. I called out, "If that thing gets any closer, I'll put it on a strict LED-only diet." She shouted something about neighborhood safety and property standards. I reminded her I wasn't in the HOA and that FAA rules applied to her drone. She scoffed like federal law was just a lifestyle suggestion and called her drone back. But Cheryl wasn't done. The next stunt? I caught her trying to open my van door with a ruler and a plastic bag like she was reenacting a B-movie heist. I watched her from the porch, not saying a word until she finally noticed me. She jumped like I'd fired a shot. "Oh, I thought I saw something moving inside." "So, you decided to break in?" I asked. "I was inspecting. Tampering with private property," I corrected. She threatened to call the cops. I hadn't moved an inch. Wasn't even armed, unless sarcasm and black coffee counted. But 10 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy arrived. Cheryl flailed and pointed at the van like it had grown fangs. I calmly handed over all the documentation, clearances, ownership, you name it. The deputy raised his eyebrows. Cheryl ranted about her drone getting shot down with a weapon of war. I hadn't even mentioned the shotgun. Yet, next morning, 2 more drones appeared. This time, I wasn't just holding coffee. I held my 12-gauge Remington, loaded with burst shot. One drone ventured too close. I waited until it was 10 feet away and boom. The drone spiraled into a bush. The second zipped away like it had a family to feed. Cheryl came running, screeching about terrorism and lawsuits. She called the sheriff. Again. And someone else. The FAA? A few days later, an FAA agent showed up. Polite guy. I showed him saved footage from multiple drone incursions, including one peeking into my second-story bathroom. He nodded, took notes, and promised follow-up. Within a week, Cheryl received a cease and desist from the FAA and a fine. She couldn't operate a drone within 50 miles. She posted about it online, claiming a government conspiracy. Then came more flyers, more wild accusations. My favorite? One said, "Your neighbor may be spying on you." It featured a blurry photo of me watering plants. I circled the grammar mistakes in red and mailed it back. She placed a fake impound sticker on my van. HOA Enforcement Division, it claimed. Except, HOA has no such authority. That's when I called in a favor. Agent Daniel Duncan, former colleague, now Bureau Field Agent, dropped by the next morning. We sat on the porch, sipping coffee, waiting. Cheryl came marching down the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, straight for the van. She grabbed the door handle like it was hers. "Ma'am, step away from the federal vehicle," Duncan said calmly. She froze, mouth twitching. "I'm the president of this community. I have every right to inspect suspicious vehicles." Duncan pulled out his ID. "This is a federally designated surveillance vehicle. Step back." She muttered, "No one told me." Like that was a legal defense. She backed off but didn't stop. More drone attempts. More flyers. One night, surveillance footage caught her trying keys on the van. That changed everything. Duncan told me to send the footage immediately. The FBI opened a formal investigation. Cheryl wasn't just a neighborhood nuisance anymore. She was a federal liability. A few days later, Duncan and a federal investigator returned. Cheryl tried to intercept them, stack of papers in hand. They didn't entertain her theatrics. They came inside, reviewed the footage of her trying a second key. It was clear. The next day, a team visited her home. Not in riot gear, but serious. She received a formal packet. Her clipboard hit the ground. She disappeared after that. The HOA imploded. Members resigned. Lawsuits stacked. Turns out, I wasn't the only one she'd harassed. Neighbors shared evidence. Emails, videos, fabricated finds. She lost her title, her influence, and eventually, her home. Weeks later, a moving truck came. No goodbye flyers, just quiet. She packed fast. The drone gear was the first to go. I watched her leave from the porch. Give a small wave. She didn't return it. The neighborhood feels different now. Calmer. Flyers stopped. Dogs walked past my place again. One neighbor said, "Thanks for handling the clipboard, queen." She handled herself, I replied. I just turned on the lights. I made a wooden sign for the gate. Private property. Not subject to HOA. Trespass at your own risk. Underneath it, smaller text. Drones will be composted. One morning, I found a lone drone blade in the bushes. No drone. Just the blade. I tossed it into the fire pit. It melted into a bubbling puddle. Felt right. The van's still there. Still legal. Still unmarked. Mitch once asked if I had spare surveillance gear for raccoons. I said I'd think about it. As for Cheryl, rumor is she moved to a gated community 2 counties over. Tried joining the board there too. That place has real rules. I imagine she's learning the hard way.